Leeds United have secured their place in the Premier League for the 26-27 season, and everyone is broadly very, very celebratory if they're a Leeds United fan. However, journalist Baron Cross has done a little bit of a deep dive into the sort of behind the scenes of what's happened this season so far, the kind of stuff that you don't really talk about until a season is over, and a lot of it provides a significant amount of insight into what happened, why it happened, and what we can expect to happen going forwards, and a little bit of insight into the 49ers decision-making process. So I'm going to go through all those. I'm going to break it down into transfer stuff, the danger time, and then sort of the afterwards and how we got through it all. And to start with, I'm going to go into the transfer bits. And one of the things that I found very interesting in Baron Cross's piece, which is available on The Athletic now, is that he stated that Ampadu was the one that stressed the need for some very, very strong signings, some very decent reinforcements to the side. And in my opinion, this is because Ethan Ampadu has repeatedly experienced getting relegated at all of his clubs prior to being at Leeds, something he didn't want to have to go through again, and obviously the club was going to reinforce anyway, but this made sure that there was a specific sort of flavour of reinforcement that targeted areas that needed to be targeted, and that seems to have absolutely worked out. There was also a little bit of information on Dominic Calvert-Lewin's transfer, with it being said that Daniel Farke basically saw it as a gamble on whether or not Calvert-Lewin would stay fit all season. If Calvert-Lewin stayed fit all season, he saw it as perfect, we are going to be fine, we're going to be safe, we're going to be sound, brilliant, love it. But if he found himself with repeat injury issues, then things could get quite bad, because we'd be in a little bit of a darker place in terms of squad depth and all that kind of stuff. And on the subject of squad depth, there was also a little bit of conversation on Pascal Struijk. Towards the end of August, there was a little bit of discussion in terms of like transfer news on the end of YouTubers and journalists and the like, who believed that there was a risk of Pascal Struijk getting on the end of a very, very, very big offer and potentially leaving Leeds United. Everyone sort of dismissed it out of hand at the time and thought, well, that's a bit of a weird one. Where's this story come from? Basically nowhere. In the times since, and specifically in this article, we've discovered that there was actually a bid put in for Pascal Struijk. The way that it was phrased was, it was a bid that was big enough for Leeds United to genuinely consider it if it didn't happen in late August. Late August being basically the end of the window, which means that we wouldn't be able to sort of backfill the position. We wouldn't be able to make sure that, well, we've got someone to replace him. We've got a decent quality centre-back that is able to step in as our left centre-back in the 2, or as it turns out in the 3, which meant that we didn't accept it. Now, a lot of thought at the time was that it was Spurs that would potentially have a little bit of an interest in Struijk. There's no confirmation as to who put the bid in this article, but that would be my guess. And I'm kind of glad we didn't now, because strengthening Spurs would have removed the opportunity for the funniest possible situation to have happened here, which would be a real shame, you know? And it shows that the 49ers, as much as a lot of people like to make the whole in it for the profit comments, and they're just trying to take what money they can out of the club, if that was the case, they would have sold Struijk and not bothered about the consequences. The fact that they didn't sell Pascal Struijk for what would have almost certainly been 20-30 million quid tells me that they are very conscious of what the club actually needs and will do what they can to keep it safe, and are going to be very, very decent custodians of the side. However, we did get to a scary time around November last year, which is where there was a little bit of conversation about Daniel Farke potentially being fired. So, before the match against Nottingham Forest, which ended fairly badly, an employee reportedly thought that Farke was being incredibly tactically stubborn, sticking with the formation that he was and not changing things up, which at that point, fair enough, he was being very stubborn. After the Villa match, there was also a little bit of conversation from a club insider that the choice to start Aronson again and again and again was apparently not helping Daniel Farke's case, because at that point Aronson had had a couple of decent games early in the season, but was starting to drop off a little bit. I would make an argument at this point that that's not hugely Daniel Farke's fault. The number of options that we had aren't huge, especially in the role of someone that could be a number 10. Whereas if it's Aronson, it's Aronson. I imagine we fix that in the coming window, but we'll ultimately find out. But then we got to the City, Liverpool, Chelsea run of games, and according to Cross's report, a big loss against any one of City or Liverpool or Chelsea would have seen Daniel Farke lose his job. Now, against Chelsea, obviously we made the switch to five at the back and it worked brilliantly. Admittedly, in the first half, we were getting pummeled, which was bad. I think if we wouldn't have turned around in the second half, and even if the second half itself was 0-0, it probably would have been a case of off you go. But the tactical change clearly opened the eyes of the 49ers and went, okay, there might be something here. Add to that decent performances against Liverpool and Chelsea, including getting points out of those, and he managed to keep his job. In addition to that, though, which is something that I found really interesting, is that the board thought a sacking would be tough because of the short turnaround between games around that period. It's a case of every 4 days or so you've got a new match, which is why back in the sort of final international break of 2025, I was saying if Daniel Farke's going, it's now. And Daniel Farke ended up not going, but you need to give the coach a little bit of time to bed their way in. And it seems the 49ers also agree with that. So if we're thinking at any point in the future that the 49ers are potentially going to sack a manager, let's keep in mind that they're probably going to wait until an international break rather than anything else. But it's, in my opinion, fairly interesting to note how close we got to Daniel Farke losing his job. And it was literally just a case of, oh, I'm going to go five at the back. That worked. And now here we are, surviving in a fairly decent season. And then you get to the after period. Now, apparently, the players never doubted Daniel Farke. This is from a source close to the players, which I find very, very interesting. And it could be a case of we didn't really spend long in the relegation zone to begin with, and on top of that, let's be honest, being in the Premier League comes with the understanding that things are going to be incredibly difficult. And players understand that, and seemingly they didn't really blame Daniel Farke for that. In addition to that, it's noted that the character of the squad is definitely key. It's one of the reasons that we're potentially staying up. But on top of that, there was a little note that the squad basically manages itself with a guiding hand from Daniel Farke. In terms of man management stuff, they keep it amongst themselves, and there was a further sort of specific detail on the key figures being Ethan Ampadu as the captain, obviously, but with Joe Rodon and Dominic Calvert-Lewin also being sort of key figures in that dressing room, it's good to have those key anchor figures, in my opinion, because it means that you've got sort of a decent spine. The fact that they all play up the middle of the pitch is beneficial because it means you've not got some twat who is running wild on the left wing and has to help out the right back in a match and discuss a potential yellow card. That's why it's genuinely hilarious to me that Vinicius Jr. was Real Madrid's captain for El Clasico. Madness. But in addition to that, there are reportedly big bonuses based on the finishing position that we achieve this season. Specifically, going 14th or 15th will pay significantly more than 16th or 17th, which is going to be fun to see. I think we're potentially going to keep on climbing, and I quite like that bonus structure. It means that players genuinely have a reason to want to push towards the end of the season. The club itself will also get more like revenue based on finishing position, but not too much. I think it's £2 million per position. I don't know. But that roughly sums up the bits and bobs from Baron Cross's article. It's basically a lot of things that we knew, but some of the specific details, like the Strauch bid, for example, I found very interesting, and the way that the side sort of keeps themselves managed and keeps themselves disciplined is also something that was very much interesting to me. But as always, interesting to me is just what I think. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. That'd be massively appreciated. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Could even be a channel member. It's up to you. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you later. Toodaloo.